What is going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG video, where today I have a very special guest. You guys know him from his YouTube channel, from his Twitch streams. One of the best players in the game currently right now, and that would be Pablo Meza, aka Tablemon, coming off of his top 4 finish at the recent Memphis Regional Championship. Pablo, how are you doing today? How's it feel, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you, Chip. That was a very kind introduction of you.
For sure.
Doing pretty well, pretty happy about obviously the Memphis result and overall how my season has been going. And yeah, pretty happy with how 2017 is closing out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Been a crazy year for you. We've seen you make a top 4 at internationals. We've seen you top 8 the World Championships, win a regionals this season. So pretty good way to end 2017, I would think, making 3rd place at the largest regionals of all time. Guys, I will say that PTCGO is on maintenance right now at the time we're recording this, so I'm just showing Pablo's list on his Facebook page, which you should definitely check out, Tablemon on Facebook. So we're going to be going over his list, talk about his tournament report, and just what made him choose this deck. So we'll start off there. I know that you went to London. You played a totally different deck in London. It was the same format, so you just want to talk about that real quick, what you played in London and how that affected you deciding on this deck for Memphis.
Yeah, so I mean, for London, we were just coming off of Vancouver, and the news had hit, but then what usually happens, or what had been the trend so far, is when a news hits, a lot of people just default back to safer options. And so I figured that Gardevoir was perceived at the time as the biggest deck, or the best deck as well. And I was contemplating Gardevoir myself for the tournament, but I couldn't really get comfortable with the Max Potions version of the list. I was very comfortable with the Sylvan version that I used to win Vancouver. But I knew that going into a tournament with the Sylvan version, when the Max Potions version was out there, and probably the most popular among the top players, I would definitely be at a disadvantage at that point, because in Vancouver I beat versions that had 2 Max Potions, but you really you can't cope with 4 Max Potions. Like that's just too much healing. So I figured that if I couldn't get comfortable with the best version of Gardevoir, I might as well try to play against it or have a good matchup against it. And that's why I defaulted to Greninja as my option for the tournament, because it has a very good Gardevoir matchup, right? Things didn't work out that way in London. I actually faced 0 Gardevoir with my Greninja deck, and I played 2 Pikabulus. One I beat, the other I lost. I also played a Golizabeth deck, which I lost to as well. But I was 4-1-1 at one point, and in that 7th round, I actually played against Buzzle Lycanroc. I played against Theodore, who went on to get top 8, and I saw the deck in action. I saw how I saw the potential with the strong energy and the Regirock on turn 1 to get knockouts on all the basic Pokemon, the 60 HP basic Pokemon that are out there right now. I saw how the GX attack and Buzzle's second attack are also pretty good options, and you always had like this panic button with Lycanroc's GX attack as well, which I had been testing a lot of Zoroark Lycanroc before Crimson Invasion, so I knew how good Lycanroc's GX attack was for anyone who just couldn't prepare their bench, or there are just some decks that they can't work without a big bench, so it's always a good safe button to have there. And so I saw the deck in action. I saw how well it did in the end in the tournament, and I came very close to beating it, but I actually whiffed an energy to use water duplicates in a crucial turn early on, so I lost that way. But I recognized the deck strength, and immediately it caught my attention. And then after London, I usually never pick a deck until like 1 or 2 days before the tournament. But I knew that for Memphis, the top 3 decks, the top 3 decks and the Puzzle Lycanroc as well were the decks I would probably consider, because I don't think I'm like that great at innovating new strategies or coming up with new decks, but I'm really good at piloting decks within the match, right? The top tier decks, I feel like that's my strong suit, piloting them better than other people. And so I focused on those 4 decks, and the more I played Puzzle Lycanroc, like there's actually one of the videos I made for my channel, or one of the matches that I ended up streaming. I was asking myself, like, how did this deck get so far? But the more I got to know the deck, the more I got to play with the deck, the more I understood how to approach the different matchups and how to recognize the alternate win conditions, where sometimes you don't have to deal with the big guy that your opponent managed to set up. You can just go after the Lele's because they're easier to take down and stuff like that. So the more I played the deck, the more I liked it, and the more I kept beating the other top tier decks at the time, which Puzzle, I mean, Zoroark, Lycanroc was not as present. I knew it existed, I knew it was being played, but I didn't think it would be as popular as Gardevoir, as Golisopet Zoroark, having just won London, and as Steel Valley decks. And so I felt like Puzzle finishing in top 8 made it so that people knew the deck was good, but it didn't get that huge spotlight, which was also pretty good for the deck, because then people weren't as inclined to hard counter it.
Sure.
And so that's how I ended up coming up with Puzzle. Like, I decided to go with Puzzle like Wednesday before Memphis. Okay. But it was mostly like throughout all the games that I played against all the people that I coach and stuff like that, where I used the deck and then they also used it against me and stuff like that, and we talked through the plays and everything. That helped me make my decision for Memphis.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's a lot of info right there, so I really appreciate it. So I would imagine that you said that you experienced the deck for the first time really in London. So I would imagine your testing kind of started with that top 8 list that made top 8 at London, and your list now that we're looking at does look a lot different. So you want to talk about some of the changes. I'm sure your testing probably started with a very similar list to what top 8 at London, as most people do when they start testing. So how did you come to the changes you ended up making and the final cards that you ended up adding?
Yeah, so immediately, like from looking at the London list, like I recognized the use of Zygarde EX was to have a way to combat Psychic Weakness, and then the baby Zygarde was to have a way to attack the Pokemon that have GX protection, right, such as Hoopa and Alola Ninetales. However, immediately I knew that Sudowoodo would be a much better option, because if you're up against a Hoopa that's attacking you, you can attack it right back, and the same for Ninetales. And neither are popular enough to justify a counter, I think. So immediately I knew Sudowoodo would have a lot more usability in many other matchups, not just for those specific, not just for having a specific counter for those two cards. So Sudowoodo was the first card that I included right after London. Like, I honestly didn't play more than 2 or 3 games with the Zygardes, and I immediately switched to the Sudowoodo. And then the more I played, the more I recognized how useful Regirock was, like not only in the early game to get that extra 10 damage to get the knockouts on the basic Pokemon, but also just for the overall like numbers you wanted to hit in different matchups. For example, a Gardevoir, if you want to one-hit KO a clean Gardevoir, like a full health Gardevoir with a Knuckle Impact, with one Regirock, you need the Regirock, 2 strong, and a Choice Band. But with 2 Regirock, you only need 1 strong. And therefore, that's actually a big deal, because you only run 4 strong in the deck. And sure, you can count of them somehow, like somewhat, to get you there for the numbers, but you can't rely 100% on always having the right combination of energy. So the second Regirock was like playing an extra strong, essentially, whenever they were both in play. And it also allowed to make it so that it would never be priced, or it would very unlikely be priced when you wanted to get a knockout on a 60 HP basic on turn 1. You would draw into it naturally a lot more often. Therefore, your first Brooklet heal, instead of going for the Regirock, could go, like, you would already have the Regirock, therefore you could go for a Rockruff or a Remoraid. So those were the two immediate changes that I made right after playing like 2 or 3 games after London with the list. And then everything else stayed intact until the very last day of Memphis, until Thursday, Friday, where I was playing against Rahul, and he was very confident and very excited about using multi-switch. And so the more I thought about the card, I figured that, well, that could be a card that could be very useful throughout a match. There are definitely times where after you've attacked with Lycanroc, the energy just stay there and they're not used anymore. Sometimes you have these awkward hands where you elixir onto something that ends up not being useful later on, like on a Sudowoodo, but then your opponent plays around Sudowoodo, and then that energy is wasted. So I figured multi-switch would probably not be a crucial card that would allow me to win a certain matchup or something, but it would be an overall useful card, and it would definitely take opponents by surprise for sure. So that surprise factor was what made me drop the Field Blower for the multi-switch, just because the Field Blower, it's also it's not a crucial card. It's a nice card to have to make your opponent force them to find another choice band or make them have awkward decisions on who to promote after you've taken a knockout by removing the float stones. But it's not incredibly, it doesn't change any matchup. So I figured multi-switch would be useful in different situations than the Field Blower, but it could have a potentially game-winning impact, more so than the Field Blower. So that's why I went with a multi-switch.
Nice, yeah. Do you want to talk about any cool plays that you were able to pull off over the weekend with multi-switch? Like anything sticks out to you that was really useful?
In round, there are 2 times. In round 4, the first match that was streamed from Memphis, I played against Dustin Zimmerman, and game 2, I had a terrible hand, but multi-switch allowed me to power up Buzzwole GX out of nowhere with 3 energy. And so that actually made him concede the second game. He had won the first, and he conceded the second so that we would have enough time for the third one. But my hand, I didn't have a good follow-up to that play, but it was such a dominating play at that point in time that it made it that as long as I had any sort of supporter card, I would probably end up just being able to close out the match. So that was pretty cool to just get a knockout on a Tapu Lele out of nowhere. And then in round, I want to say 6. In round 6 against Greninja, I actually posted a picture of what happened. I ended up powering up Regirock because it was my best attacker at the time. The minus 20 damage was actually kind of relevant. And it allowed me to, my opponent was trying to buy time because he had Guzma. He brought up the Regirock, and then it allowed me to put pressure with the Regirock and knock out his Espeon EX, which he was using to stall it. So it wasn't a card that allowed me to win. It wasn't the difference between winning or losing, but it allowed me to close out the match a lot faster and close out the window of a potential comeback for my opponent. So sure. Those were the 2 most important rounds. Day 2, it definitely didn't come up as useful. Maybe I used it against Forest or Primawatts on stream, but they don't. Those situations aren't as clear to me as the other ones I just mentioned.
They weren't as crucial to the game as those other times. Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. Okay, well, very cool. Now I'm going to just take a little time if you want to walk through your day 1 experience, starting off with round 1. You don't have to go through each and every round and matchups and everything, but if there's any games from day 1 or any specific plays, anything you want to talk about from day 1, feel free, go ahead.
Okay, so round 1 I started off playing against Solgaleo, Zoroark, Rayquaza. Okay. And it was I put a lot of pressure early on, so that allowed me to win the match, but I actually made I know I made 2 misplays. I was still kind of sleepy, or I don't know. I know I made 2 misplays, 1 in each game. I was still able to win, but the misplay I do remember is I was so focused on trying to close out the game that I neglected knocking out a Solgaleo that had 1 energy, and that was his only Solgaleo in play. I went for a Lele thinking that I could just close out the game easily, but then I whiffed 2 more elixirs. I only needed 1 elixir, but I whiffed both of them, and that made the matchup super complicated at that point. So even though I won 2-0, it was a lot closer than I would have imagined, and also because of my misplay. So that was a wake-up call, and okay, I need to focus a lot more because I can't be making those misplays so early on, because they will definitely get punished eventually.
So I gotta ask, did you use Sudowoodo to copy Sunsteel Strike for 250 in those games?
I actually did not
Oh
have
man, dang.
the Udo was actually not as useful as I hoped it would be, just because my opponents definitely played really well around it. And
Okay.
whenever the Udo could actually become a threat, they actively targeted it to prevent that situation.
Sure.
So, Surudo, I mean, it drew attention to itself, so that was good
Mm-hmm.
because it drew away attention from other cards. But it wasn't as useful as I would have hoped it to be.
Okay.
So then round two, it was against Alex Wilson in the mirror match. And this is where a trend started where I ended up losing a lot of game ones throughout day one. I was still able to close out the series 2-1. But yeah, it was something peculiar, I guess, of my day. But I was also very thankful that I chose Buzzwell because it's a much faster deck than something like Gardevoir, right? So when you're at such a big tournament and any tie is essentially a loss, pretty much, in terms of making it to day two and going on to win the tournament, um, a fast deck such as Buzzwell allows you to finish games a lot quicker, whereas Guardy takes the setup and blah blah. So I felt like because I lost so much on game one during day one, choosing this fast aggressive deck was definitely the right call in order to have enough time to close out the other two games to get the wins instead of ties. Then round three, I played against the Zidui Zoroark. Those matches were very straightforward, I guess. He didn't have Mewtwo, so all I had to do was knock out the Zoroarks, and then his damage output was just nothing compared to mine. Round four, I played against Lycanroc Zoroark, and once again, I lost the first game, but then I won the other two. I'm pretty sure my opponent did not have Mewtwo as well, so that was really good for me. Round five was another mirror, and once again I lost game one. And then the other two games, I mean, the mirror mostly comes down to who gets the elixirs first or actually gets them. So Sururo might have come into play then, but I'm not entirely sure. And then round six was Greninja, where I ended up attacking with Regirock. Regirock came in clutch to take 4 prizes, 2 against Espion, 2 against Tapu Fini. So that was pretty cool. And then it felt like I was on the other side of the match that took me out in London. So I was like, okay, I mean, sure, I missed the energy for the water duplicates, and that made me completely lose the match. But even if I had gotten it, it probably would have been an uphill battle at that time. And then round 7, I played against the mirror match once again, losing game 1, but then winning the other 2. Once again, just getting a bit luckier, I guess, with the elixirs. And at that point, I was 7-0, so I had guaranteed my day 2, so I was pretty happy about that. Last time I went 7-0 was in Fort Wayne, so it had been a while since I hadn't had like a win and in situation in the last round and stuff like that, which is always nice. And then round 8, I played against Mahone, who got top 4 as well, and it was definitely the hardest mirror I had played all day, mostly because he had I believe he had 1 Acerola, I'm not sure, but he had 2 Parallel CD, and those definitely gave him an advantage in the mirror because it removed my Regirock, it potentially removed other useful cards that gave me utility throughout the match, or he could limit his bench in order to reduce my Lycanroc's GX attack damage output and force me to find like a strong and a choice band to be able to knock out a Buzzwole or a Lycanroc with his just 3 bench Pokemon. So it made for a difficult game, and I lost game 1, I won game 2, and then third game, I'm pretty sure I whiffed an elixir that would have tilted the match in my favor, and so we went to time, and I had to corner with Rockruff in order to prevent a loss. Okay. So he used Knuckle Impact with Puzzle, and so I cornered it, and that way he had a very small hand and he didn't have artillery set up, so he couldn't find Kuzma, and that was enough for me to survive the extra turn that I needed to to prevent him from taking 3 prizes in 2 turns. In the end, he could only take 2 prizes, and he would have 1 left. So it ended up being a tie, which was fitting because it was the hardest mirror I think we both faced.
Sure. Real quick, before you talk about round 9, I do want to ask you, you mentioned the corner Rockruff. There are 2 different... I meant to ask you about this earlier before we got into the tournament report, but there are 2 different Rockruffs, and I know Pram was very adamant about his choice of Rockruff, but do you want to mention just why you chose corner over the one that does 10 damage, and if corner was useful at all?
Okay, corner was very useful for 2 reasons at the tournament, and then for another reason outside of, like, it never happened, but it was potentially...
a reason for including it.
Yeah, so... corner allows you, like in a mirror match or something, if you corner an auxiliary or you corner a Sudowoodo, it guarantees that even if they have Guzma, your Rockruff with the 1 energy will survive, because that's the one going to the bench and they're bringing something else up. So energy attachments are incredibly crucial in this deck. That's why you have the elixirs and the healthy energy count. You really never want to miss an energy attachment with this deck. And so by keeping the energy alive with the Rockruff, in those situations means that because Lycanroc just allows you to target whatever you want, you always have this panic button or this safe button where you can just attach another energy and probably get a knockout with your GX attack. So that's why corner was extremely useful throughout day 1. It allowed me to make all those plays where my Rockruff would always be safe, and then Lycanroc would guaranteed knock out whatever big threat my opponent had with its GX attack. And then I also chose corner because, sure, I understand how attacking other Zoruas or just dealing damage could be good with the promo Rockruff, but corner opens up a different win condition, which is possible deck out. When Auxiliary is very popular, when Oranguru potentially as well, when Garbodor is also a popular card, you can get some win conditions by deck out. When it's been like a long scrappy game, it opens up the win condition of you corner something that cannot damage the Rockruff, and therefore you end up winning the match through deck out. And I feel like it's not something that a lot of people immediately think about or take into consideration, and because of that, it makes it even more effective because they don't prepare for it, they don't take it into account. And with so many mirror matches, I believe it was actually relevant at one point in one of my mirror matches. I don't remember exactly which one, but it was definitely a game where I cornered, and that bought me enough time to make sure I had enough energy on my other attackers to win the match. Or it could have opened up a situation where I won by deck out as well.
Yeah, and it obviously came in big in that round 8 against Mahone, like you were just talking about, being able to ensure the tie as opposed to losing the match, which gets you 1 more match point for day 2. So
yeah, if it had been promo rough, I would have definitely had my first loss in round 8.
Yeah,
but corner allowed me to get the tie.
Okay, so jumping right back into the tournament, let's talk about round 9 real quick. Heading in, you know you're already guaranteed day 2, like you said, at 7:01. But go ahead and walk us through round 9.
Yeah, so round 9, I knew that it was basically I got to play an extra round for the next day to try to add to my total to get closer to top 8. It was incredibly important also because we got 6 rounds in day 2 instead of just 5 as usual because of the huge amount of players we had. And so I was up against Elizabeth Zork, and I feel like that's a matchup I played a lot during my testing, and I was very comfortable in it, even though they have Mewtwo and stuff. They won't necessarily always get it early on and stuff like that. However, in one of the games, I won 2-0, but in one of the games, my opponent went first and he retreated his Wimpod into a Mewtwo, which clearly indicated he had a DC ready to attack my Buzzle and stuff like that, right? But he wasn't contemplating or taking into account that I had 2 Regirock. So I went out of my way to get both Regirock because I had the strong as well. So I hit the Mewtwo for 70. And then sure, it retaliated for 80 or 140 back. I don't remember if he had the choice band. But then I 2-hit KO'd the Mewtwo, and that's where I was incredibly grateful at playing 2 Regirock, just because it allowed me to deal the 70 damage and 2-hit KO the Mewtwo. Otherwise, it would have always been a 3-hit KO, and that's when Mewtwo starts becoming a big problem. If you have to deal 3-hit KOs, it gives them extra turns to find the Acerola, to recycle it, and stuff like that. So the 2 Regirock came into play, and once that seemed to be like his plan in that particular game, to just pummel with Mewtwo. And then when I 2-hit KO'd the Mewtwo and he didn't have a chance to double puzzle it back and stuff like that, it just allowed me to overpower him with my much better attackers, in the sense that I have weakness advantage and I have 1-hit KO potential, and he doesn't.
Right.
So it ended up being a pretty favorable match for me. And so at 801, finishing the day off, I was pretty happy. I had played 24 out of a potential 27 Pokemon games that day, so I was pretty excited.
Yeah, definitely a tiring day for sure. But like you said, finished 801, first seed heading in to day 2. Got to be a really good feeling. Just walk us through that once you saw those standings posted and you saw your name at the top of 1,000 players from day 1. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I was obviously very happy. It's been like, I don't remember the last time I was first seed going into a day 2 or a top cut. I mean, League Cup, sure, but not at a big prestigious tournament. So I was pretty excited, and mostly also because, like, when I was successful in this season, I was successful at Worlds, but for example, in Oceania, where I got second, I came in as 32nd seed. And then when I won Vancouver, I was like 27th or 28th or something like that. So I always felt like I was, in day 2, I was always at the bottom with chances of making it, but I needed to have a perfect day. And then sometimes I had it and sometimes I didn't, like in Fort Wayne. But then now, I was finally at the top. Like, it was very improbable, I guess, for me not to get all the way into top 8, and that's a feeling I hadn't had. And after last season, where I didn't even make day 2, I was pretty excited and pretty ecstatic about getting that first seed going into the second day.
Yeah, for sure. I know, as having been the first seed once before going into day 2, it takes just a ton of pressure off you day 2, because you need to win less games to make top 8. You can just kind of take your time. You can relax a little bit. So I definitely know the feeling, and it's definitely relaxing. So now I know we talked through day 1 here, but let's go ahead and hop into it. Day 2, did you get enough sleep after day 1? Did you feel rested? Were you ready to go day 2?
I don't think I got enough sleep, just because like we went out for dinner and stuff, and I mean, I like to sleep between 7 or 8 hours. I got like 6,
Sure.
which was enough, but definitely not my ideal. But I was pretty excited. I was with friends, and like Pokemon tournaments, I love the competition, but it's also about seeing your friends, hanging out, stuff like that, right? So
Absolutely.
That's also very important. So yeah, I stayed up a bit late. I went to sleep, no problems, and then I woke up early. I actually, I was moving hotels that Sunday, and I arrived to the other hotel with Igor, and he also made day 2. So we started walking, but we walked the wrong way. So eventually I realized it. I was like, damn it. So we started the other way, and we got there, like we had to be there at 8:30, and we got there at like 8:34 or something like that. So good enough, but yeah, that was like, okay, now I'm definitely awake, right? with the scare of getting there late. But yeah, I got there. We got seated, and first round I got paired against Pikabulu. So going into day 2, I was first seed, and then Michael Pramawat was second seed, I believe, or third. And then there was
third, but he was up there, yeah.
Yeah, Michael, I think, was third seed or something with Pikabulu, so I knew I was playing one of them, but I didn't know Michael was playing Pikabulu. And so he flipped over a Mew, and then he went first. He used Bridget, and he benched Robin. And I was like, okay, I really haven't tested this matchup as much, because it's not a deck that I encouraged to the people I coach. I used it against them so that they could practice against it, but I definitely didn't grind out the games like I did with the other decks. So I was like, okay, this guy made it this far, and like during conversation, he said he faced quite a few puzzle Lycanroc, so I didn't know what to expect. But then just playing it out, all I did was just target down the Beakables and the Grubbins as much as possible, and I won both games relatively simply. And he commented like, "Wow, I'm very surprised that you went for the strategy of targeting down the Beakables. None of the puzzles that I faced off earlier or yesterday tried that." And I was like, okay, I mean, that seems like the only way to approach the matchup really, because you can't match them energy-wise or damage output-wise if they have the Beakable.
Sure.
So that was like a very nice way to start off day 2 with a solid win and staying at the top of the pack. And then I saw Pramawat won as well, so I knew I was up against him the next round, which even though I know him for over 15 years, we had actually never faced at a Pokemon event.
That's pretty crazy. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, round 11 I played against Michael, and I won 2-0. I think like both games, he did the exact same thing that he did in the stream match. He would actively target the artillery, which is I think one of the mistakes that other Zoroark Lycanrocs did against me. They wouldn't go after the auxiliary, because if you deny the auxiliary, you deny me of the extra resources or that extra like reach into the deck in order to find the energy or the Guzma or the N that I need, right? So he very smartly went for that, and then he focused on my attacker. But after he ended me down to low card, I was very fortunate to draw into the right cards I needed to close out games. And so I was able to win 2-0, and then obviously still very happy at that point. Next round, I actually played against Beakabulu once again. That definitely surprised me, but I was very grateful, especially after how simple it was on the first round, and then this one was the same. And I just went after the vehicles, and that was it. He got close to beating me in game 2 because I started off horribly, and he got a pretty solid start, and he was running artillery, which I think is the superior version of Beakabulu. But in the end, I managed to get rid of the Beakables, and I made the comeback.
Yeah.
So that was a straightforward games, and I was 6-0 for the day. Got the 3 wins I needed to guarantee 100% top 8. So I was feeling pretty relaxed. I was like, okay, I have the next 3 hours pretty much to chill, to eat, have a nice breakfast, which I didn't get because I got there late.
Yep.
I was pretty happy. But then that's when they decided to stream me twice in a row, so I didn't get the break that I was hoping. Round 13 I played against Ben Potter with Lycanroc Zoroark. That match was streamed. He had the same list as Michael Pramawat. I knew he had no Mewtwo at that point, so that was pretty good. And I also knew that he was at 31 points, I was at 34, so if he made top 8, there was a chance, like I would be happy to have him in my bracket in top 8. So I decided to concede in order to allow him to make top 8, and therefore a potential opponent of mine. He would become a potential opponent of mine, and therefore, because I had already beaten Michael, and then we played out the games, and he beat me twice. I won once, but the game I lost, one of the games I lost, I feel like I went for a super risky play. I was pretty confident in the matchup, especially with no Mewtwo. So I was like, I'm very happy to have him in top 8. So I decided to concede. And then, you want to watch those games, you can watch them they're all over YouTube or Twitch. And then round 14, I played against Forrest with Gardevoir. That was my first Gardevoir of both days. And he was also at 31 points, but I chose to play that one because I was picked to get streamed once again, and I felt like, I mean, there's like value to that. And I was also thinking that, well, maybe I can set some sort of record for highest amount of Swiss points for a day, like a day 2 record, something like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play this one. God of War is also a matchup that I wouldn't mind facing off in top 8, but it's definitely not as straightforward, because if they get a strong start, it can put you in trouble. And so that's what happened, right? In game 1, I pressured him a lot, and I never let him build up to a God of War, and the one he did manage to build up, I think, you can just knock out with Puzzle's attack or Lycanroc. It's all about building 2 threats. That way, no matter which one they get rid of, you have the other one to follow up. And then game 2, he got this incredibly strong start with the late, and then the 2 cards in the back, and I made it close. It came down to 1 prize card, but he had the resources to find Kuzma for the game. And then game 3, the combination of my early pressure and his awful prizes just meant that he couldn't cope with my pressure. And like, we only had like 6 minutes to finish the game, but it actually ended up finishing. And then, yeah, I won the match. I was now at 37 points. And yeah, like, he ended up winning the last round, and with 34 points, he actually ended up bubbling. So I'm actually glad that I didn't just stay put at 34 points. I definitely went the extra mile to guarantee. And getting the first seed going into top 8 out of almost 1,000 players also has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So was that the last round of day 2, correct?
No, that was the second to last round, and then the last round was against Rahul. And then I decided to ID. I was like, okay, I really need to eat. I haven't eaten anything all day. So now I finally get my break. And yeah, so we ID'd. We went to go get lunch in a place nearby, and then we were ready for top 8. And coincidentally, the 8th seed was Ben Potter, the person who I conceded to, so it ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah, I know you said that's a matchup you're definitely fine going up against in top 8, so walk us through that top 8. How did it go going in? I imagine, since you did concede to him, you obviously felt fairly confident in the matchup. Did it end up playing out the way you had envisioned it?
Yeah, so I had already beaten Michael, who had the same list as Ben, and I was very confident because he didn't have the Mewtwo. Both games, they were very close. He drew into a lot of his outs early on, and then one of the games he whiffed a choice band, one of his 3 choice bands, I think, in a 5-card deck or something like that, or one of the 2 choice bands in a 5-card deck. I don't know, like a very small chance of him whiffing, and that would have taken us to a game 3. But just the weakness advantage you have against them does definitely matter, because the Zorak GX has become liabilities. Once you put 30 on one, then a stronger Regirock and a choice band allows Boswell to just deal 180 and one-shot that Zorak. And I don't know, the matchups were straightforward in the sense that he wasn't actively going after my artillery, which was a mistake of his. I feel like if he had gone out of his way to target my artillery and then focus on the puzzles, he would have had a better chance at the match. But because he didn't, artillery allowed me to always find the resources to either build up a follow-up threat or immediately recover from what was just not out. Whereas without artillery, that becomes a lot harder. So I won the matchup 2-0. And yeah, at that point, I was like, oh yes, I'm a genius for conceding, because I want me to win this one fairly straightforward. And then I saw that Rahul and Pramawat were in a very close series, and I actually preferred to face Michael instead of Rahul, because Rahul had Mewtwo.
Yep.
So I was like I get along better with Rahul, but then he had Mewtwo, so I didn't want him to win. And so Michael won, and I was like, okay, I already beat Pram, I already beat Ben with the same list, I can do this again, right? And yeah, I mean, top 4 started, and then I lost the first match. I definitely didn't draw as I would have hoped for, and no artillery made it so that all my draws were awkward. I managed to win game 2, which I think I drew even worse than game 1, but I drew the cards I needed like I top decked a lot in that match. But yeah, like my turn 1 Sycamore was I drew into a Lycan Rocks, 3 Choice Band, and 3 Energy. So when I saw that hand, I was like, oh, okay, this is just not going to happen today. But I somehow managed to win that game 2. And then game 3, it came down to the very end. I was 10 damage short of knocking out his Tapu Lele. And like the turn before that, before the end of the series, I had a decision where I played Rescue Stretcher and I put back Remoraid, Octillery, and Tapu Lele into my deck because I knew I was going to take a knockout on his Lycan Rock. I would be down to 1 prize and he would end me. There was no humanly possible way he wouldn't end me. And so that happened. And so I used Brooklet Heal to grab the Remoraid that I just put back. Then I set up another puzzle. I hit both elixirs, which I was definitely not expecting. And so after that, he ended me, and I drew a basic energy. So if I had Brooklet healed the turn before for a Regirock, I would have won because I would have had that extra 10 damage to knock out the Lele with the energy I drew. However, if I gone for the Regirock, I would have had like the basic energy, the 2 strong, the 2 Sycamore that I had left, and the Tapu Lele as outs to win the match out of like a 15-ish card deck. Mm-hmm. But by going for the Remoraid, I didn't get the basic energy as an out, but I did gain 2 Octillery that were left in the deck as potential outs to allow me to win the match. So it's like a 1 card difference. I had 6 cards versus 7 by going for the Remoraid. So even though I drew the energy, and at the time I was like, oh no, why did I not grab Regirock? I'm so dumb. But then, like, objectively and I don't know, mathematically and statistically speaking, going for the Remoraid I feel like is always the right decision, because if I could play out the scenario 10 more times, or 10 times going for Regirock and 10 times going for Remoraid, I should, in theory, win more times by going for Remoraid than going for Regirock. So even though I didn't win this time around, I still feel like I made the right decision. And so that lets me sleep at night, right? I didn't misplay. I didn't do a big mistake. It was just the combination of cards I drew didn't allow me to win. But by going for the Remoraid, I gave myself a better combination of cards to try to win. So
it's always frustrating whenever you do everything statistically correct and mathematically correct, and it ends up going back to where if you had done something just slightly differently that was a little less optimal, you might have come out differently. But like you said, I think it's the correct decision. It just didn't quite work out. And we also have to mention Pramawat being the person to draw the best of any human I've ever seen on stream. So he drew very, very well. But he's also one of the best players of all time.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. So, I mean, if you're going to do so well at a tournament like this, not only do you have to be really good, but you also have to get lucky at some points. I got lucky at some points. Like I hit some elixirs that were statistically very improbable to hit, stuff like that. So when I saw them, when I reviewed the match and I saw him how he drew, I was like, wow. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's part of the game, and this time it was him, maybe next time it'll be me, and that's Pokemon, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And even in my interview that I did with Pram earlier this week, he mentioned multiple times how you have to be very, very lucky at these tournaments. So I think it's something that top players all recognize, that it is a part of the game, and for you to win a tournament, it just has to be your day sometimes, and it was definitely Pramawat's day. So top 4 at the largest regional championship of all time. Definitely can't be too upset about it. I know it does feel a little bad to not get the W, but how's it feel? Has it really set in yet? I know we're just less than a week removed from the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, even if I had beaten Michael, I feel like my matchup against Azul was definitely worse than he had. So you never know. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Very happy with such a close to 2017. It's definitely been a very big year for me in terms of changes, because I started doing this full time, and then I don't know, it's been a new lifestyle, a new job, new life and everything. But I'm very happy with everything in my life. I'm very happy with everything in Pokemon, and getting third place at the biggest tournament, biggest regional in history to date. I'm definitely proud of that. Definitely
Absolutely.
proud.
For sure. Well, as good as 2017 has been for you, I am certain that 2018 will be leaps and bounds greater. So I'm very excited to see what you do in 2018. And yeah, I'm going to give you a second here. If there's any closing thoughts, anything you want to say. I guess I should ask, looking back at the tournament, obviously it worked out very well for you, but looking back, do you think there's any changes you would make to your list if you were to restart Memphis tomorrow?
I genuinely don't think so. I mean, I have thought about ways to improve the deck since, and I feel like I could potentially drop the Sudowoodo for a third Rockruff, and then find some other cut, maybe the multi-switch for the Lycanroc that's not GX, but that's the Midnight form, I believe, that deals 30 damage, but if it's a basic Pokemon, it deals 30 more. It would open up a lot of plays where Rockruff can evolve to become a threat, and then I don't know. That's the one card that it gives you that protection against the non-GXs. I mean, the Hoopa and the Alola Ninetales non-GX, but it also allows you to pressure the basics and doesn't force you to, like, if you start Rockruff, you want to find the Floatstone to retreat into the Buzzwole with the Regirock and the Strong. So I feel like it would open up a lot of more early pressure plays, which this deck thrives on. And having the third Rockruff just means that I had a lot of games where I definitely priced one Rockruff, and it was hard to maneuver with just one in the deck, because if they targeted it, I was out of Lycanrocs pretty much, because I only ran one Rescue Stretcher. So having a third Rockruff could only be better for the deck, I feel like. So those are the two things that maybe if I could do it again, I would do it differently.
Sure. Well, congratulations once again. I'm going to give you a second here. If you want to do any plugs, any shout-outs, your social medias, your sponsors, anything like that, feel free to go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So for any who don't follow me yet, or who don't know my social media, I do YouTube videos on YouTube, youtube.com/Tablemon. I stream live on twitch.tv/Tablemon. I also have Facebook, Twitter by the same handle, and Instagram by Tablemon YT. And then huge shout outs to Soccer Scoop, who I'm part of their pro team, and who have supported me since day one of this new season. And they're the reason that I'm able to travel to all these events and be there and be with people and compete and everything. So I'm really grateful for their support. Shout out to CCG Castle as well for all their support throughout 2017. Even though we are not going to be working together anymore starting 2018, I'm very grateful for their belief in my project since very early on, when perhaps the Tablemon project wasn't as big as it is now. And shout out to Ultimate Card as well for their products and the things they send me. And yeah, that's it, I think.
Awesome. Well, guys, I would really encourage you to check out Pablo's YouTube channel and his Twitch streams and stuff. I personally enjoy peeping into Twitch streams whenever I get the chance and get to watch his YouTube videos. He puts out some of the best Pokemon TCG content out there right now, so definitely be sure to check him out. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All those things are at Trainer Chip. You can follow my Twitch streams at Trainer Chip as well, and then here on YouTube, of course. Feel free to subscribe. Definitely leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, guys. And for me and Pablo, that's going to do it. We're going to get out of here. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, take care.